Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Beyond the Hype. As always, I got the goods for you. I got something exciting for you. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President, Executive Editor at Large for Black Enterprise. And many of you, maybe not all of you, may have heard about this emerging sport called pickleball. And I'm not going to be the one to try to tell you what it is, but I'm telling you it's hot enough that professional athletes are investing in it, whether it's in teams, in leagues. It's a really hot emerging sport. Some of you may play it already, depending on where you live and who you know. Some of you will say, I've never heard of it. What the heck is pickleball? Well, listen, you're going to get beyond the hype of this hot emerging sport because I have a great guest. And let me just always do full disclosure when I know my guests from other places. My guest today is Antonio Pullen, who's the founder and CEO of Dinkin Bangin. And he'll tell you more about his company. But how I got to know Antonio is that I served as a lead mentor in the Black Ambition program, Pharrell Williams program supporting Black founders. Antonio is one of the entrepreneurs I was assigned to mentor. We have a really great pod of entrepreneurs that I was privileged to get to know. And even more importantly, for the purposes of this conversation, the value and the promise of his company was enough for him to get a Black Ambition prize of $50,000. So he is one of the really hot emerging entrepreneurs in a hot emerging space, and that is pickleball, not just as a sport, but as a new entry to the business of sports. Listen, without further ado, let me welcome to the show, Antonio Pullen.
Hello, Alfred. Thank you for that introduction to the game of pickleball, and plus Dinkin Bangin and myself, and just grateful to be here.
Well, before we get into obviously telling me about the company or telling our audience about the company and about the sport in general, tell us more about you and your journey to even becoming the founder of this company and your love, I could say a love and passion for this sport.
Well, as a kid, I played all sports from basketball, soccer, football. I ran track, so I consider myself an athlete. And as I got older, I leaned more so to just towards fitness. And maybe 2 years ago, I was teaching a fitness class, and this lady came in and interrupted my class and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of pickleball?" And I'm like, "Hey, why are you interrupting my class?" She's like, "Hey, you have to try this sport." So she gave me a free class, and the rest is history. I'm here talking about pickleball. But I'll tell you one key thing. She said at the end of my session, that free class, she said, if you stick with pickleball, it's going to take you very far.
Wow.
Hence how Dinkin and Bangin came about.
But how long ago was that? Because again, I'll tell you, I hadn't heard of pickleball at all. I would say it was during the pandemic, and I don't know what the timing of that was, but I don't think I heard about it. I think I read about it online. I think somebody posted about this sport, and I want to say Serena Williams was talking about the sport and why she was, and I believe she's invested in the sport in some way, shape, or form. And you're thinking, why is this tennis star, obviously the number one tennis player in the world, and maybe in history, depending on who you talk to, excited about this sport? So how long ago was it? Like I said, I heard about it in 2020 during the pandemic. How long ago was this when you were introduced to the sport?
So I'll just say pickleball started in 1965.
Oh wow.
Uh, yeah, it's been around for quite some time,
Hmm.
but it's like with everything has a time and a place. And in 1965, it was invented, but it wasn't really up until COVID hit. COVID really has pickleball where it is. For me, I've been playing pickleball almost 2 years, but I began this journey as far as a business of pickleball 7 months ago.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. That says something about how hot it is. Like you said, it's been around for over 50 years, but in a matter, like you said, less than 2 years, it's become a really, really hot sport. And hot
Right.
enough, not just for people to want to play it, but for people, both famous and not famous, to see it as a business opportunity, as having reaching the kind of popularity, marketability that again, there's a lot of sports. I mean,
Right.
obscure, non-obscure, not all of them turn into money sports, business sports. So talk to me about you're coming to the idea of launching Dinkin and Banging, how the company got started, what you thought you were going to do in the beginning, and the journey you've taken to present. 7 months later, less than a year later, with a really hot business. Again, to be a Black Ambition Prize winner is not a small thing, and you're among hundreds of really outstanding entrepreneurs who many of whom got prizes. But talk to me about the journey to now, when you really have a business that's being affirmed as a real opportunity in the marketplace.
Well, let me first say I want to give a big thank you to Black Ambition, Pharrell, and Felicia Hatcher. Uh, what they're doing is amazing, and I'm part of that, so it's definitely amazing. But as far as the journey, I take you back to that day when I was introduced to the game of pickleball. In that moment, I didn't know about the paddles. I didn't know about the equipment. I didn't know what to use. I didn't know where to play. And so for me, I'm one of those people like if I don't know, I'm gonna figure it out. So I just Googled, hey, where do you play pickleball? Went to a local park, and there was a couple of guys out there. They had paddles. I said, hey, can I borrow one? They gave me one. I went out and I got embarrassed. It was a horrible first game. I'll never forget it. Very, very embarrassed. But because of all of those things, I figured, hey, I don't want anybody else to experience that. You know, I want you to know what paddle is the best fit for you. So that's part of our company. We have a retail space. We sell paddles, balls, everything pickleball. That's why we dove into that. But also, no one ever taught me the game. So I decided to become a certified pickleball coach. I have my certification through PPR. A big shout out to PPR, amazing organization. So I decided to become a coach. And from that, I was able to teach people for the very first time how to get their first paddle, but also learn the fundamentals of the game so they don't have to experience that embarrassment that I experienced. So fast forward, now here we are dinking and banging from the retail space, the coaching space. It's just magic.
And tell me what PPR is.
PPR is let's see what's the best way to put it. It's the organization that if you look up USA Pickleball, it's almost like the governing body of pickleball,
Ah,
and that's their coaching certification program that they use to just ensure that the coaches that are coming out they have the right fundamentals before they start going out teaching the game.
oh wow, wow, wow. What is your take as someone who now is in the business of pickleball as well as an athlete in pickleball on why what was happening in 2020, 2021 that took this sport that's been around for 50 years? What were the factors that or the elements that came together that aligned to suddenly make this one capture the attention of key people in and out of sports, but two capture the attention of people who wanted to play the game?
So, COVID,
Mm.
one word, COVID. COVID had us so detached and separated from our family members and friends. Pickleball can be played outdoors. So, a lot of people began to go outdoors, and that was the one game where you can still socialize, be outside, but practice social distance for the most part. So, COVID, in my personal opinion, catapulted this game because the pickleball community is a thing of beauty. I mean, from the age of a 5 year old is like my youngest a student to like an 82-year old, which is like one of my oldest students. So just imagine that type of community coming together during COVID, where a great great grandmother can play with her great great grandkid. It's nothing else on this earth that can match that, to be quite honest.
So you're talking about I'm someone who really is as you know, I'm passionate about all kinds of different things, but I'm a student of the business of sport, and and my chosen sport, as you know, is natural bodybuilding, and it's very popular. There's a lot of natural bodybuilding federations all around the country, all around the world, as a matter of fact. But there are elements that prevents it from becoming a breakout mainstream sport. Natural bodybuilding is more mainstream than professional bodybuilding because of the drug-free aspect of natural, and people feel like it's more accessible. But the bottom line is there's certain things that have to align for a sport to become a mainstream breakout sport. And so you highlighted a couple of things. And the other sport that did well during the pandemic was golf. Again, it was outdoors. It was naturally socially distanced, because other than your pairing, and even that could be spaced out. You could play that safely and still be COVID safe, without having to really make any major adjustments at all. Again, I didn't know about pickleball, so I didn't understand that element of it. But the other element that I always tell people is that it has to be something you can play whether you are, and I'll take it to basketball. Anybody can play basketball, no matter your proficiency. You can, and I'm a horrible basketball player, but I played all the time because I like to play. I mean, you just play, but you don't have to be super proficient to play basketball, and you still have enjoy the game. And like you say, men and women can play. Different people of different ages can play. So that element of a sport, it has to have what I call breadth, meaning a wide variety of people can play, as well as depth, that you could be amateur just playing for fun, or you could play at the top of the game and actually get paid to do it. But anywhere along that spectrum, you can move. So I just think it's very interesting that COVID created the environment for some of those other things to align. So before we get much further into conversation, explain what pickleball is for those in our audience who don't know. I know they're hearing pickleball outside, grandma can play, but exactly what does that game look like? What is it? What are the elements of the game for someone who's uninitiated to the sport?
I thought you would never ask. Pickle. Let's just go ahead and get that out. There's a story that the guy that discovered the game, his dog name was Pickle, and he chased the wiffle ball around. The ball of the game of pickleball is a wiffle ball. It's plastic, a ton of holes in it, but that's where the name supposedly come from. But as far as the game itself, I try to keep it simple when describing it. Just imagine a tennis court, smaller version of a court. Imagine table tennis. A lot of us are very familiar with table tennis. Think about that, and then also the game of badminton. So you can play it in two different ways. You can have singles, pretty much just like tennis, or you could do doubles, where it's either men's doubles, women's doubles, or mixed doubles. But the logic of the game is very simple. I think put it in the reference of what is it? Was it Pong, the
Yes,
old school Atari?
yes.
Just imagine that where you have two opponents. One serve the ball across the net. Once it goes across the net, it comes back over, and you just continue to play until someone makes an error or the ball goes out. And you just continue going. And typically, it's going to a game of 11 or you go to 15. But in the simplest form, it's just basically a smaller version of tennis. You got some table tennis elements in it, and also you factor in a little badminton. But it's a little bit more complex than that. But I just want to try to keep it
No, I mean
simple.
that's a great entry level introduction to understanding what the sport looks like and feels like, and I can definitely understand why, um, someone from age 5 to age 85 could play the game. Um, but there were some other elements that I learned during the course of our time as mentor mentee in our pod that you educated all of us about some of the trends that are also undergirding the emergence of the sport as again a mainstream breakout sport, and then some of the things that are happening that you're involved with. So let me just talk about some of the bigger things. Um, a sport that can be played indoors or outdoors. A sport that, because it's smaller than a tennis court, and I know you talked about some. I don't want to tell your story, but about some gyms converting space that was used for something else in the gym so they can have pickleball courts in the gym. Talk about the adoption of pickleball. I would say in three different arenas: gyms, fitness chains, high schools, and colleges.
You have the outdoor courts, which have the same surface as a tennis court. It's a different ball from indoor versus outdoor. So for those that are wanting to play the game, think about that when you are purchasing your balls. But the indoor courts, you have some facilities, Lifetime. I'll say they are doing an amazing job with converting Not the greatest thing for a lot of basketball players, but they're converting some of their basketball courts into indoor courts, but they're using the outdoor surface, which is amazing because most facilities they use the just regular hardwood floor, which is fine, but you need a different ball when you play indoors. So those are two main things as far as the indoor versus the outdoor. But when you speak on middle school versus high school versus college versus major league, those things are happening right now as we speak. You have a lot of middle schools that are implementing it into their PE courses now, which is amazing
Wow.
because a lot of kids are very interested in it and they're playing the sport. You get to high school, a lot of those high school kids are actually competing in a lot of these big tournaments. But the key, the big sleeper is the college level because this year the NCAA hasn't tapped into it just yet, but the Major League Pickleball, which is a brand new organization, which now LeBron James, KD, they all belong to, they decided to host a national college pickleball tournament. So now you have these different college clubs that are actually going to compete at the major league facilities. So it won't be long before the NCAA step onto the scene and try to convert that over. So I say all that to say for kids that and parents that are learning about pickleball, if your kid shows an interest into it, go ahead and nurture that because before long, it's going to be opportunities for scholarships and so forth with the game of pickleball.
Yeah, you're laying out, and we're kind of transitioning to the obviously the other part of this conversation. What this means for you as a business, what this means as an industry, not just as a game. So you talk about early adoption of kids playing, whether they're playing in their middle school, whether they're playing at the family picnic, where that you got a generation of kids like, oh yeah, this is the game that I play, and then you get to the point where that becomes a legit high school sport. That you can letter in. And again, you're talking about a sport that's easily adaptable to existing facilities. So, maybe not every kid wants to or is able to play basketball, but a lot of kids can play pickleball. And it's like you said, you talk about indoor physical activity doesn't require you to invest more money in land. You can really convert existing facilities. So I can see a lot of school systems, both inner city and rural, across the board, saying, listen, we got 5 basketball courts, or we can convert this gym and use it for basketball or pickleball, depending on what we're doing. So then you got a generation of kids that's used to playing in middle school or high school. But as you said, once this somehow becomes, and I think you're right, I think it's coming, it becomes an NCAA sport. Like a sanction with college teams, Division I, Division II, Division III, because again, it's affordable, it's adaptable. I could definitely see small schools in particular who may not have, big money football or basketball programs adapting the sport. But once it becomes sanctioned to the NCAA and,
Right.
Young people become adults who are really proficient at the game enough to win titles, then the natural demand is, I love this game, I'm really, really good at it. Where can I go to play and get paid to do it? Or at least
Right.
paid enough to make a living at it on the short term, even if I don't want to make a living at it for the rest of my life. And then you add in that other element that I want you to kind of weigh in on, the fact that, and again, LeBron James, the big names that are in sport are invested in it, but they're not the only ones invested in it. People are looking at this and saying, there's a reason why Black Ambition, those who are, and let me say it as a friend, as a mentor, I have nothing to do with who got prize money, who was invested in it, who doesn't. That's not what us mentors in the program do. But there had to be an assessment that said, no, this is a good place to invest because of the upside potential of the game. I mean, what do you see as attracting the money, the investment into this sport, which bodes well for you as a business, but it bodes well for the future of this as a particular sports investment opportunity?
I think it's a lot of different elements. Let me first say, when we speak of the younger generation, the number one female pickleball player in the world is 16-year-old. She's 16.
Wow.
She just and she was the youngest. The fours, what, under 30? She was on that pickleball, homeschool, and she dominates the game. So the future is very bright for the next generation. So I think that's an element to where you can see there's gonna be in the next 5 to 10 years, you're gonna have a generation of kids that are gonna play it. So the sport is gonna continue to get better, faster, more competitive. So I think that's an element. But I think the biggest element is tournaments for one, because it's simple math. You have tournaments where the pros play in these tournaments, but also the community play in the same exact tournament. They kind of paint a picture to you. They have a tournament coming up in Atlanta in May. The top pros in the world, they're coming here to compete. For one, they want to show that they're the best, but also it's a pot, just like any sport. They're coming up for the money. Plus, they have sponsors that are paying them to be a walking billboard. So they're there in that spot. But guess what? It's only maybe 20 or 30 pros, to be quite honest. But then you factor in 2,000 players that are going to surround those professional players that's coming out to play in the same exact tournament. And simple math says each person paying almost 150 bucks to 200 bucks per person. So that's just saying how many people will be there. You factor in how many eyes are actually going to tune in to watch that broadcast, because now the big networks are tapping into it. You got the FS1, you got ESPN, even what is the tennis channel? They're converting over. So it's like the eyeballs, the viewers are there. So the sponsors are paying more money to get in front of those eyeballs. So I think that's something that's very, very important. But also the ownership of these teams. It just, for like a Naomi Osaka, a LeBron James, it diversifies their portfolio. And if you really think about it, you look at all the sports that have existed, from basketball, football, baseball, whatever the case may be. Do you know how long it took for an African American to become a owner of those teams?
Right,
Very long time.
right.
But now you have the Major League Pickleball that is almost 1 year. They're going on their second year, and you already have this diverse group of owners.
Well, you make a really
So
strong point. I want to pause you there for a second, because we talk about the lack of representation and ownership of the major sports leagues, and let's talk football and basketball in particular, where you have some black people with small minority pieces of those teams. I think there's only been one majority owner in basketball, Bob Johnson, when he had the Charlotte Bobcats, and I want to say we haven't had. Again, I've been following this as a business journalist. We've never had a majority owner of an NFL sports team who was black. Again, there are people, Magic Johnson and others, who own percentages. So there's nothing to know. But what I try to tell people is that what we're seeing in pickleball is when you look at the birth of the AFL, now it's part of the NFL, or the birth of the NFL, when those sports started, the barriers to entry, what it cost to get to start or own a team, was a lot lower, because the sport was emerging as a professional sport. And now you try to buy, I think that the most valuable sports team now is worth more than $300 billion. It's either the New York Yankees or no, it's a football team. I know for a fact it's a football team. It may be the Cowboys or the Giants. That you got to, you're talking about a half a billion, or not half a billion, $500 billion for the valuation of those teams. So when you can catch a sport like this early on that's emerging, the cost of entry is a lot lower than it's going to be even 5 years from now. Like you said, now that television revenue is becoming a part of it, you just make some really important points. The other thing I want you to dig a little deeper on, you touched on it. You said players are coming from all over the world. And, even the NBA and the NFL are only in the last 15 years have really started to be able to tap into the international potential of players in sport, doing NFL Europe when they had NFL Europe. And of course, we know basketball is all over the world with all kinds of leagues, with our players going over to other countries to play. And of course, now you have a lot more international players playing and starring in the NBA. But I guess I'm asking you, is pickleball already popular internationally? And so we're talking about just growth in potential in America, but growth and potential globally.
Right. And so the national, well, international governing body of pickleball, they're looking at trying to convert it into an Olympic sport already, and they're gonna make it happen. I believe it was maybe 5 or 6 months ago, I believe, they took some of the top players, and I can't remember which country it was, but they had like a demo or some type of exhibition to show this sport on the international stage, and it was well received. So yeah, the potential of it international is going to happen. It's already happening. You look at most of the athletes. So let me touch on this. Most of the pros come from a tennis background, and why that's important is you're going to see a lot more. That's why Naomi Osaka. That's why you have Serena. Uh, they see it's identical to it, but it's now less stress on the body. But a lot of the pros, for one, they're converted from tennis, but most of them are from different countries. So now you have these countries that are backing them, but they're also traveling back to their country to build up the sport also. So yeah, man, the U.S. I think the U.S. is leading charge right now, but it's plenty of countries that, again, to your point, it's a low investment when it comes to just getting a net, getting a couple balls, getting a couple paddles, until you start talking about, the very expensive ones. But it doesn't cost too much. And then you can do it you go to some countries where they might not even have a clay court or a basketball court. Man, you just have some dirt out there just right. You can play the game of pickleball. So, oh yeah, the sky's the limit international.
I wanted you said the thing about you could just play it on dirt. Is that because it has the element of badminton that it's not about the ball hitting the ground?
Exactly.
Oh,
It's a
like
wiffle
volleyball.
ball.
Like
Yeah,
volleyball.
it's a plastic wiffle ball,
Mm.
and it bounces like it's no other way to describe it.
Wow. 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 So let me go deeper into Dinkin and Banging and where you're positioning your company in the sport. You talked about having retail outlets selling equipment. Um, I know you play, so you play in tournaments. Um, but where are you positioning your company in this space, and to what degree? This is a kind of a two-part question. What Dinkin and Banging is doing and what you're doing as a real ambassador of the sport. But this is a sport with a relatively low barrier of entry compared to other sports where we can get more black representation in the sport on the ownership side than we've been able to achieve in traditional sports because of the timing. Where are we now with black representation in the sport on the ownership side? Obviously, we see big names like you said, Naomi Osaka and LeBron James, etc. But are people aware of this as a business opportunity, particularly in the black community? And again, the other part of the question is, where are you taking Dinkin and Banging?
So I'll start with the awareness. Slowly but surely. It's one of those things where the name in our culture is like, I don't know about that sport. That's pickleball. What is that? And it's like, dude, just try it and just see how you enjoy it. So you have to answer that awareness. It's a lot of black coaches coming out now. So these coaches, they're connecting and they're going to the community and they're building. It's beautiful. Like it's almost grassroots at this point. It's a huge community of black coaches that are building the communities. It's just taking a little bit longer, but like all things, especially you just look at all the different sports from baseball, look at basketball. Basketball, just say 20, 30 years ago, it did not look like it look right now.
You're right.
You know,
Actually, I was telling one of my mentees yesterday. I was like, It's hard for you to imagine this, but once upon a time,
right,
basketball was actually a white sport. That when a black person first started
right,
playing pro basketball, it was a huge
right,
deal, and the game
right,
was played totally differently back then. But nobody
right.
thinks of that today. But you're absolutely right. It's a great point.
So the awareness is slowly, and that's why I'm happy to be a part of Black Ambition. I'm happy for this opportunity to speak on this platform because this is part of the awareness. This is part of why Dinkin and Bangin came about because our philosophy is it's pickleball for everyone. Period. And if I got to be honest, it's certain sectors that I'm in that is no representation. You know, but then it's dinking and banging, and we're gonna break down that barrier. So the awareness is slowly coming. Where is dinking and banging? How do we want to position? Honestly, the big goal, we would love to own a Major League Pickleball team. I think ownership is everything. And for us, it's pretty much that's marketing at its finest. To have a team where your company is broadcasted everywhere these athletes are going on these big stages that brings traffic back to Dinkin and Bangin, where our e-commerce, our retail space is phenomenal. Because if I got to be quite honest with you, the profit margins that you receive on certain, give you a prime example, the number one player in the world, men, is Ben Johns. Dominant. When I say just dominate, he dominates singles. He dominates mixed. Mixed doubles is with a female.
Mm-hmm.
His partner is the 16-year-old,
Oh,
the
shoot.
number one in the world. So they just dominate all the competition all day, every day. And then he also dominates the men's doubles, which he plays with his brother, Colin Johns. Colin John is probably same certification through PPR. He's the face of PPR, one of the top coaches in the world. So back to Ben Johns, his paddle costs $219. And because he is Ben Johns, nobody sees a price tag.
Wow.
Yeah, no price tag. I need that Ben Johns. I need that Ben Johns. So the position we want to position ourselves in is we would like to have our own Major League Pickleball team. We would like to have multiple tournaments annual because that is amazing. But we want to be known as one of the top retailers in the world.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier and get your thoughts on, again, your approach to the company and how you're positioning it. You mentioned that when you hear the word pickleball, you don't necessarily think of a cool thing. You don't think of it as a cool black urban thing. I think you're well on your way to changing that. But when I hear dinking and banging, that sounds like something brothers would be like, yeah, I was out there dinking and banging today. That how much of that went into the name of the company in terms of, again, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it sounds way more accessible. Like if I tell somebody I was going out to play pickleball, I don't know if that sounds cool. But if I said, nah, man, we going out, man, we're going to be dinking and banging today, that sounds like,
Right,
cool,
right, right.
fun, activity to be doing in a sport.
Well, I say this more specifically to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, our culture is so amazing, but others always know how to take the culture and use it and monetize it. So for Dinkin and Bangin, it was, hey, let's keep the culture and show everybody what it is. So Dinkin and Bangin, so that you understand, Dink, Dink, is one skill within the game of pickleball. It's pretty much taking the paddle and lightly hitting the ball across the net within 7 feet, and then the opponent returns it the same manner. A nice soft dink across the net. So we're dinking. It's one of the most popular moves, skills in the game. But also banging is something that basketball. I'm a basketball player at heart. And when you're just imagine a slam dunk in the game, you got Ja Morant coming down the middle and he dunks. So in the game of pickleball, when the ball goes up pretty high, somebody comes through and bang it. They smash it, and the hope is that it never returns. So we dink and we bang.
Wow. Wow. It sounds really cool. And again, I got a picture of them banging in the paint. Like you said, when you coming in for the dunk, somebody's getting bodied. you know, you know. But it's that kind of physical contact thing that makes a sport attractive, even in a quote unquote non-contact sport. So again,
Right.
like I said, I really appreciate it as someone who's learning about the game. If I hear dinking and banging, that sounds like something I might want to do. As someone who whether I just play as a weekend warrior or I really want to excel in the sport and up the ranks of proficiency and professionalism.
Right.
So in the remaining time we have left, talk to me about what you see. We talked a lot about the future of the sport, but what do you hope to accomplish? You talked about a lot of it. You're owning a sports team, being a brand that's one of the premier brands in the sport, whether you talk about retail and products. But what do you see some key things you want to accomplish, let's say, over the next couple of years? What should the Beyond the Hype audience should be looking out for from you and from Dinkin and Bangin?
I don't want to give up too much.
No,
There's a lot
I
of
understand.
things.
I know.
Yeah,
Only say what's
yeah,
ready for prime time.
right.
Yeah.
For one, our juniors, we want to start a juniors academy. Well, we're currently building the juniors academy. So we want to build a team to be able to go out and compete either in the juniors tournaments that we create and have ourselves so that others can come and be a part of, or if they're good enough, like that 16-year-old, they can go play on the pro level.
Mm.
But we want for one to give that opportunity to the juniors. But again, we want to tap into that market space and have that representation. Within that, another goal is to give more people opportunities to play the game. So to spread the name Dinkin and Bangin, to spread the game of pickleball to more areas that they have no idea what it is. So it's like, how can you say you like something or dislike it if you never tried it? So I think that's a huge goal of ours, is to spread out within the market space, reach more people. But on a more serious tip, uh, we want to do more leagues. And leagues is pretty phenomenal. I don't know if the viewers know much about ALTA. It's pretty much a local league for tennis, and they have a huge reach. We want to be that pickleball version. We want to create those leagues for different states to join in and compete against other teams or housing owners association, HOA. That's something else we want to tap into. But the big thing is increase our market space in the retail space.
So I want to get back to the retail part of the business before we finish talking, but I do want to dig a little deeper. Let's say I'm listening to the show and I'm in one of those areas where pickleball either is new, maybe even unheard of, but either I want to play or I want to learn the game, or more importantly, I'm thinking of this as a great thing to introduce my kids to. Again, you're talking about parents, depending on where they are,
Right.
accessible and recreational facilities. I'm passionate about this idea of another activity that can get our kids to be more active, as we, particularly in the Black community, deal with obesity and other, chronic diabetes and other issues that in part stem from our kids not being as active as my generation was when we were just outside playing all the time.
Likewise.
you know, but let's say that either I'm interested in adopting the game, whether I'm 70 and I just want to do something to stay active, or I'm a younger person, in my 30s who wants to put something fun to do on the weekends, or in my mind, my child or my grandchild, I want to introduce them to a fun sport that they can play and have a good time with other people and be active. What's the best way to go about that?
So if you're in the local area in Atlanta or even in the state of Georgia, reach out directly to Dinkin and Bangin. We have a huge network of coaches. So we'll definitely be happy to help with that. You can email us at pickleball@dinkinandbangin.com, and we can help you. Even if you're out of the state, we have access to pretty much the whole PPR Rolodex when it comes to coaches. A second thing is, I was going to say, you can also go to the PPR website and you can type in your state, and it'll give you a list of all the coaches within your area. So that's a great way to start. But also, just again, it's sneaking up. Let me rephrase that. Pickleball is near you right now, audience. It's near you right now. You just don't know. It's either in the subdivision that you drive by sometimes. It's either at the rec center that exists, or is at some type of lifetime gym or whatever the case may be. Pickleball is near you. You just don't know it's there. So I say that to say, just Google pickleball near me. Simple as that. Google your rec center, and then also you can go to USA Pickleball because they have so many ambassadors of the game, and they'll be more than happy to explain what the game of pickleball is or show you exactly where you can go and play.
And would that be the same process if I wanted to become a coach or a coach of the game at any level?
So I truly, I'm kind of biased, but PPR is, I love what I've learned from it. And the one thing I really love about PPR, they give you a library of just different tips, different ways. So I'm a student of all things that I touch. So every day I'm looking at different videos. I'm studying the pros, looking at their mechanics, seeing what work, what doesn't work, go back to the drawing board, and then coach. Because this is a business, but I love coaching. But for someone that's saying, "Hey, I wanna become a coach," awesome. Go to PPR and start the process.
And for the remaining part of our discussion, I do want to talk about the retail business and the idea of creating, whether it's paddles, apparel. I don't know if there's special shoes or there will be associated with this sport. But again, there's so many different pockets. There's the media, television revenue opportunity. There's the actual creation and promotion of tournaments. That's a money making opportunity. I mean, again, you're in a really good sweet spot because you do have multiple streams of opportunity around your personal passion for the sport and the growing popularity of the sport. But talk to me about the things like the paddles and what makes a pickleball paddle, and what are the things that you, whether it's, tell me the name of the number one guy again.
Ben
Ben
Johns.
Johns, but I want the Ben Johns paddle, or I just want a good serviceable paddle for me to learn the game. Um, but talk to me about the potential for your business in that space.
So, for me personally, I'm speaking from a coach standpoint too, and just our future coaches. So we have access to so many different, I guess, opportunities to present our paddles, either at a clinic or where you may have 24 individual on up. So you can present those different type of paddles, and they decide if this is what they need. And I'll kind of touch on like just the paddles from a $219 paddle to a $25 paddle.
Mm.
So someone that's brand new, I still wouldn't recommend the $25 paddle because why waste your money? But it's gonna be totally different than the 219 because every paddle is created different. You may have the thickness. So some of the main key things you should think about when you're looking at a paddle, looking at the handle length. Some paddles are long, some are short. I have small hands. I need a short paddle. I don't like the two-handed. Most tennis players that convert over, they like that tennis racket two-hand. That's what they prefer. The thickness of the paddle. Some are thin, some are thick. That has to do with a lot of power. How much power are you going to put on the ball, right? And then also the surface. The surface, some are slick and some are gritty. So depending on your style of play, if you're someone that loves to do top spins or slice, well, someone that likes to hit the ball and it grabs it and moves it, you want that gritty
Put
surface.
some English on
You
the
know?
ball. Yeah.
Yes. But if you're someone that I just want to hit the ball around, I want to learn my grandkid. All right, awesome. You don't need all of that until you decide that you need it. So
Is there
as
such
far as
thing as changing paddles mid game? Like
you talking about different types,
my brother, my late brother, was one of those bowlers that was so good. He had a bag like
right?
three different balls. He had one just for picking up spares.
Right.
So he would switch balls even during the course of a game because of depending on what he was trying to do.
Right.
Is it like that in pickleball or can it be?
I'll say recreational play. You may have some people that they look at a paddle, they miss the last three shots, and like, man, I need my other paddle. All right, cool. They may switch it,
Right.
which is fine. But as far as at the pro level, it's very rare in doubles.
Mm.
But in singles, it's not that they switch mid game, but they may have a different paddle that they play in singles because it's a different game than doubles. So So they may have this type of paddle for singles, and then you see them in doubles. It's like, oh, that's not the same paddle. So it's not really one of those things where someone have three different paddles in their bag, and they're like, hey, I'm gonna start with this one, and then I'm gonna switch to this one. Like, not really. I have one that I love, and that's the only one I stick with. And most players are like that.
On the pro level or at the higher level, do they also like study film of their opponents to kind of, yeah? Wow, wow.
You better if you want to stay at the top.
Okay. What
Yeah.
other equipment, if any, are there specialized to the sport that people should be thinking about?
So let me speak on opportunities because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. That's why we are here. Uh, Apparel, like customizing different cool graphics around pickleball, man, it can be extremely lucrative if you have the right image. Also, shoes, you tapped on shoes. So Skechers that I know of the big brands, Skechers is one of the first big brand to officially make pickleball shoes. They have two of the top pros that are actually wearing them now. They have their own specific shoe. You got Tyson McGuffin, and then you have Catherine Parenthia, and they're both phenomenal. But as far as outside of shoes, you have your balls. You gotta have balls, and guess what? Balls crack. They don't last forever. Again, I repeat, they crack.
Right, right.
So you need your balls. You have your paddle. A lot of people like bags. You got to have your bag. How do you move things around? If you can customize a bag, phenomenal. The big brands, they have cool bags because they have paddles. So bags are very important. As far as like tennis dress, the dresses and whatnot, the tennis skirts, that's becoming very popular as well. So it's so many different entry points if someone wanted to enter. But I just say, hey, do your research so you know the culture of pickleball before you decide to create something.
Is this something that's also being picked up? I can't imagine that it won't be if it's not happening already by like major sports retail chains. I don't know, Foot Locker, Dick's, Modell's. I don't know. Different people have different things in different parts of the country. Is it being picked up there too?
Oh, it's there. Everyone has a small space
Mm.
in it because again, it's hot,
Wow.
and you have to be smart to at least try. So you can go to a Walmart. I hate giving them the credit, but they jumped on it. So you got a lot of the top retailers. I'll say they have some form of pickleball within, and they're just basically like any business. They're just watching to see if they can turn a profit.
Wow, man. Listen, Antonio, I knew this was going to be good because, again, I've been privileged to learn a bit about your business over the past several months because of being your lead mentor in the Black Ambition program. But I'm really happy that you were able to join me today to really give a deep dive into the sport and into what Dinkin and Bangin is doing. And once again, to our audience that wants to follow you and follow Dinkin and Bangin, what's the best way for them to do that?
Instagram for sure, Dinkin and Bangin, at Dinkin and Bangin. But also, we have a private group me, and we also have a private Facebook group where all the magic happens. So visit the website, follow us on Instagram, or join our private Facebook group.
Oh man, listen, Antonio, thank you so much. I might have to try to pick up the sport. I'm trying to figure out how I can pick up another sport. My sport is natural bodybuilding. I'm trying to get back to golf, which I stopped, because of the pandemic. Again, even that was the perfect game to play during the pandemic. I haven't played since before the pandemic, but that takes time. It takes time to be bad at golf, much less be good at golf. But this sounds like it's something interesting to do. I have a little grandson who's just toddling around now, but this might be something that grandpa and grandson can do together. So I may have to pick
Yeah.
up the sport, and I'm going to at least try it. I'm going to let you know that I'm going to at least try the
Right.
sport,
At least
and
try.
because it just sounds like it's a lot of fun, even if even if I never plan to try to rise up the ranks of the sport. Listen, Antonio, thank you so much for being our guest on Beyond the Hype.
Thank you. You're welcome, man. Hey, I appreciate you having me on as well, Alfred. And I'll leave with this. The game of pickleball opens up so many different doors. You meet so many different people from all walks of life. So Just try it.
Perfect way to end our conversation. Listen, I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President, Executive Editor-at-Large at Black Enterprise, and you just heard and watched another great edition of Beyond the Hype. Take care, and I'll see you next time.